Hello and welcome to 2021, letter to/from my future self. I have been doing this now for almost a decade, so the doobly-doo will show you all of the previous letters. As always, number 1. You still with Quinn? What's up? Where you at? Where you at? More specifically, where are you living? And what is your job? Things are going well. Quinn and I are officially engaged, which I don't know if we were last time, but we had already talked about it last time. And we've been together for 8 years. We've been functionally engaged for most of that time. I'm working at Seed and Spark still. I'm also an adjunct professor for Stevens College and for LAU Brooklyn. I also sometimes freelance instruct for Hoo Ha Ha, the women in comedy community started by Elizabeth Banks, do the occasional freelance consulting. Basically, I'm all over the place. And then in terms of my location, currently, my location is Grand Junction, Colorado, in our childhood home, which is where Quinn and I have been staying for a little while since we moved away from New York. Hopefully, by the time you see this, we're in LA and have our own apartment again. But I gotta say, living with Mom has been kind of amazing. It's been nice to, not pay rent, certainly, but also, my mom has a dog now, which she got last year. Her name is CJ, Calamity Jane. I was there when she got her picked out, and she is a constant source of sunlight and also a constant source of CJ. If you'll notice, I've got a little love scratch on my dang face from CJ because she got a little rowdy the other night. It's fine. She's fine. But if you're curious, that's a pupper. 2. Also a pretty standard what's up question. What have you made this year? When I filmed my letter to future self last year, there wasn't a global pandemic happening. There is currently a global pandemic happening. I'm half vaccinated. I'm getting fully vaccinated next week. But as a result, didn't make a whole lot this year. I did manage to make a remote episode of Sam and Pat Are Depressed, both to comment on the ongoing situation, which it felt like Sam and Pat had an angle on, and also to let Christine Cherry come out fully as Girl Pat and Girl Chris. So that was a very exciting thing to get to do, despite being across the country from one another. I also directed and edited the final episode of Rosalie, the web series by one of my former students. So that's up now officially. We're done after 3 years of making that show. And I also started a new podcast with my friend Christina Rhea. So yes, I have 2 podcast co-hosts. Their names are Christine and Christina. Everyone's confused. It's fine. Christina and I have a podcast called Breaking Out of Breaking In. It's a filmmaking podcast. We also are on Patreon. So if anyone is an aspiring filmmaker or just wants to support 2 women making cool content, definitely go check that out. Number 3, what season of Burn Noticed are you on? We're on Burn Notice season 5. Number 4, what is the biggest thing that's happened to you this past year? Define that however you want. Well, a global pandemic is pretty big news. I guess outside of that, since we last talked, I finally cracked the story I've been trying to write for years that's based on Rachel and I's mystery antics as kids, and that's been submitted to a couple of fellowships, and my web series Dead on Arrival is a semi-finalist for the Stowe Story Labs. It only took a global pandemic stopping me from being in production all the time to focus on my writing again, but I'm excited to be doing it, and I guess that's a big thing. Quinn's laughing at me for this next one, but number 5, how was season 5 of Outlander? Number 6, what were the best things that you read, watched, and listened to this year? So obviously I consumed a lot of content this year, and I would say the best thing I read was Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis. I read it twice. It's just it hit me, It hit me in the exact spot I wanted to be hit. My favorite thing that I watched, well, okay, is not the best thing that I watched necessarily, but the thing that has had the most impact on me is Roswell, New Mexico, which my mom and I watched when I visited her in September, the first time I'd been out of New York all year because of the global pandemic. Remember that? And we were just looking for a new thing to watch and became very quickly obsessed with it. Then I got Christina, my podcast co-host, not obsessed with it, but she seems to like it. And I'm now writing a spec script for it to hopefully submit to even more fellowships. So yeah, Roswell, New Mexico, the gift that keeps on giving. It's also a very good show. If you like sci-fi romance and the platonic ideal of a CW show, you might enjoy it. I had a good time with it. And then my favorite thing that I listened to, I've listened to a bunch of podcasts this year. Fake Doctors, Real Friends, I think is what it's called, the Scrub Rewatch podcast that Donald Faison and Zach Braff do. That made me cry a lot during early pandemic because it came out like right in the beginning of the pandemic, and like those people just love each other so much. Everyone on Scrubs loves each other so much, and I love that show. And then also I got really into a musical artist called Orla Gartland, who is an Irish singer-songwriter. I really, really like her music. And that's it for questions from last year. Not as much of a bummer as I was worried it would be, but I think not being in New York helps with that a lot. So, questions for 2022, Brie. Obligatory Quinn job location. Have you set a wedding date yet? What did you make this year? What was the result of any of the fellowships or contests that you submitted to this year? Because you've submitted to quite a few at the time of recording and are planning on submitting to many, many more. Please read your favorite line or a favorite line from something you wrote this year. And then because I like this question this year, what are your favorite things that you read, watched, and listened to this year? And that's it. So, hello. I get the occasional new YouTube subscriber to this channel because of the Bechdel test video and because of, like, I do a lot of speaking engagements now, so sometimes people Google me and just sort of subscribe to the whole gamut. I'm sorry that this is not a very updated YouTube channel, but I do have 2 podcasts, which you can hear me talk on every week if you really wanted to. And yeah, like YouTubing used to be a really big priority of mine back when I had like time, but now I have 5 jobs and 2 podcasts and, you know, and a burgeoning, aspiring writing career and filmmaking and all that kind of stuff. So like making little YouTube videos is just not like the thing that I want to do anymore, especially given the setup that I have right now. There's a lot going on, y'all. This is not an ideal situation for anyone. Maybe I'll make more YouTube videos, but I don't know what I'd make a YouTube video about because everything that I have to say has been said in one of the many podcasts that I'm on. So if you want to follow me and you want to hear more about me and you're for whatever reason subscribe to this YouTube channel because you care about what I have to say, definitely either subscribe to my podcast Burn Noticed, which is a weekly rewatch of the USA television series Burn Notice. You could also subscribe to Breaking Out of Breaking In, which is a filmmaking podcast that I do with Christina Rea. We're also on Patreon, so if the filmmaking advice within the podcast is interesting to you, we also post a bunch of like bonus content to Patreon. So like if you're interested in learning more about the subjects that we talk about, definitely subscribe to the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. All these links will be in the description, obviously. If you want to just like see the other work that I have done, BrieCastellini.com is sort of your central hub for Brie Castellini. And I think that's it. I don't make YouTube videos anymore. I sometimes do. I keep up the tradition of this sort of a thing. So I'll definitely keep doing this once a year, but I cannot promise you that anything else is going to be coming out on this channel. Lovely to see you all. I hope you're doing well. If you have answers to any of the questions that I asked myself, please put them in the comments section, and I will see you probably in a year, or if you subscribe to one of my many other activities that I'm up to, maybe I'll see you a little bit sooner than that.